Finding you. All right, if we can go ahead and begin. Good afternoon. I'm so glad that many of you were able to join us here today at the Capitol. My name is Kenosha Davenport. I'm the Executive Director at the Sexual Violence Center. I also serve as the Board Chair for Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Violence and was recently elected to serve as the Board Chair for the at Violence Free Minnesota. Today, I am joined by advocates and survivors from across the state to show why we invest in victim service programs that provide invaluable services, advocacy, and support to victims. Why invest, you ask? For too long, victim service programs have done the most with the least. These programs have some of the hardest working advocates that are committed to supporting those who have been harmed by violence. These advocates are often overworked and underpaid. It is not because there's some owner hoarding the profits, it's because funding has not been able to keep up with the demand for services, nor has funding been able to meet the needs of the advocates that ensure that they're being paid a living wage. To our legislators, an investment in victim service programs ensures that victims and survivors in Minnesota do not have to navigate their journey to healing and justice alone. In addition, programs will be able to offer more direct client assistance, such as hotel stays and help to meet other basic needs. Your investment ensures that programs are able to pay their advocates not only a living wage, but a thriving wage with competitive benefits. Your investment ensures that programs in greater Minnesota areas like Bemidji or Brainerd are able to offer comprehensive services and a competitive compensation package too. Your investment means that culturally responsive programs are also funded. With an investment, one seeks to know what is their return on that investment. Well, I'm here to tell you what some of those returns look like. First, your investments show victims and survivors that as a state, we care and support your healing journey. Secondly, your investment leads to a more empowered workforce of advocates who can take care of themselves without utilizing government programs to do so. Furthermore, advocates will be able to take time to recharge because the movements to end violence in our state is an ongoing matter. As I close, I want to thank everyone for coming out to join us, and I want to thank our legislators in advance for investing in victim service programs. Thank you. Next, we have Guadalupe Lopez, the Executive Director for Violence Free Minnesota.
Bonjour, Minnesota. Hello. How are you? Jono Beneshi Kwe Indigenous Cosma Ngundondim. My name is Guadalupe Lopez. I'm the Executive Director to Violence Free Minnesota. I'm also a citizen of the Leech Band of Ojibwe. I work for the Coalition to End Relationship Abuse. We are a statewide membership organization with over 80 member programs, many of who have been here with us today, either in person or virtually. So thank you for tuning in. Our mission is to represent victim survivors of relationship abuse and member programs. challenging systems and institutions, promoting social change, and to support, educate, and connect member programs. Our vision is to end relationship abuse, create safety, achieve social justice for all, and that is why we are brought here today. So, Minnesota, how does it feel like to be in your house? How does it feel? All right. What does it feel like to be in our house? Because this is where we belong to make change and to come together. We are gathering here today in collaboration as Minnesota's 6 statewide coalitions to Anti-Violence Coalition, direct service providers, and community change makers. Together, our coalitions support victim services of domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and culturally specific programs. Here we are to raise our voices and stand in solidarity as the community for funding as requested to support the advocacy work for victim survivors' needs. We urgently need $25 million annual increase in crime victim service funding, and the time is now. Yes. We are here to raise awareness for our community members who have been impacted by relationship abuse, sexual violence, child abuse, and other crimes. We all need to do our part to keep Minnesota free from violence. For advocates and coalitions, that looks like finding new ways to do this work together and to center the most marginalized and impacted by the violence. For our legislators, this looks like a robust and long-term investments in crime victim services, funding for direct client assistance to support survivors in the aftermath of experiencing violence, funding for the safe and affordable housing options for survivors to achieve safety and stability, funding for prevention to both stop violence before it happens and also to transform behaviors of individuals who have caused harm. To our legislators, we are counting on you to support survivors in our state and programs that have served them. We have not received an increase in funding for crime victim services in over 8 years. 8. You'd say it in your own language, 8 years, that's a long time. So despite the increased demand of how you as advocates have been working tirelessly and to support your community. And the time is now to ask for that. So I'm going to start us off with a chant because I love the mic and we should be doing this, right? All right. When I ask, who do we want to invest in? I want to hear you say survivors. Who do we want to invest in? Who do we want to invest in? Who do we want to invest in? That's right, Minnesota. That's right. So no age, no religion, sexual orientation, cultural community, gender, or political standing should be excluded from those voices in any circumstance. I want to send special prayers and energy out to our community members who have lost loved ones due to violence. I want to send special energy and prayers to the families and community members who are still looking for their relatives and loved ones. I want to send special prayers and energies to the advocates who choose to get up every day to support victim survivors and community members. I recognize how hard this work can be, emotionally, mentally, physically, and spiritually. It can also take a toll when there is a lack of resources, of funding to support the resources and the needs. Chi-miigwech, thank you very much. I would love to pass it to my sister, Artika Roller.
Hello, good afternoon. It is so good to be here and everyone looks so beautiful today. We're all standing united to talk about the investment that we need to make in victims and survivors. So we're going to start off. I'm going to read some of the signs that I can see. Invest in survivors up top. Invest in survivors up top. Support survivors up top. We got provide more access to eviction expungement, period. Healing House is our house. Stop being Minnesota nice and do what's right. support advocates, fund the services, support funding, fund kit testing. This work matters. Fund test the kids, test the kids, test the freaking kids. Right, so my name again is Artika Roller. I am the executive director. It is an honor to serve with the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault. I'm going to put my cheaters on. I had to borrow them from my colleagues that share cheaters. Hey, we stand up for what's right. All right, so look at my notes here, get adjusted. I want to welcome you, victims and survivors, partner programs, sibling coalitions, ally communities, legislators, and joining us in person and online today. We have important work to do. The MNCASA, the Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault, is a membership coalition that drives transformative culture change to address sexual violence through advocacy, prevention, racial justice, system change, and policy. We support over 66 member programs serving victims and survivors across the entire state of Minnesota and all 87 counties. It is an honor to be here today to share this space with you. So many advocates that are doing the hard work, leaders and allies. Today is a special day. Minnesota's 6 crime victim coalitions are here together, united in community, standing side by side in this rotunda and online. We are united here in the shared purpose to fight for increased base funding for crime victim services. When we join our voices together and raise them up together, we are powerful and we know that we can make change together. We are bold, we are courageous, we're advocates. Hey, we can get this done. We are impossible to ignore. Let our collective power, now let our legislators know that crime victim services funding is a top priority for Minnesota. Direct service programs provide vital pathways to safety, justice, and healing for victim survivors and their family. Doing what we can do to be there for one another in the most difficult and traumatic periods of our lives. Our incredible programs are there to listen, support, meet their diverse, complex needs, despite the critical importance of quality trauma-informed victim services. Again, 8 years, we have not received an increase in funding. The needs of victims and survivors can't be an afterthought for us. Together with our member programs, sibling coalitions, we are urging, now we're demanding our legislators take action this year. Thank you, thank you, thank you for being here. Thank you for the amazing speakers. Thank you to our legislators who have gotten behind this work and have been true champions. And thank you to all of the member programs and advocates. We couldn't do this work without you. This work matters, funding matters, we matter, survivors and victims matter. Thank you. And I will turn it over back to my colleague, Guadalupe, to introduce the next speaker.
Yes, thank you so much, legislators, for being here, the ones that are in person and the ones that are supporting this important work. I would like to introduce Kim from the MAC Coalition to come up and speak.
So this is the first time I've actually been out of my house, let alone on a stage in a while, so bear with me. My name is Kim Von Goven. I'm the communications director for the Minnesota Alliance on Crime. In all honesty, you've heard the previous speakers. I don't belong on the stage with them, these amazing humans, but Bobby Holberg does. Unfortunately, she couldn't make it today. And while I prefer to be the person behind the person speaking, I'll do my best because representing our members here today is really what's most important. So everyone you've heard from and everyone you'll hear from in the first few minutes represents a coalition of individuals and organizations that have come together to fight for the rights of various victims of crime. The organizations and people we represent need more support. MAC, by the way, is a coalition of general crime victim advocates across the state. We represent victim advocates within the criminal legal system alongside community-based advocates. We all are here to stand in solidarity with this collective request for a $50 million increase for crime victim services. These badly needed funds allow crime victims to access the services and the support they need to care for themselves and their families. And this increase, as you've heard many times and you will continue to hear, is the first increase in over 8 years. Think about that, 8 years. What's happened in the last 8 years? There has not been a single increase. Sorry. The state must not leave survivors of crime without access to the services and resources they need. And very specifically, communities of color who experience the most crime and receive the fewest services. In 2021, OJP funded crime victim service programs provided support and services to almost 15,000 abused children, over 55,000 domestic violence victims, over 56,000 victims of general crime, and over 8,000 sexual assault victim survivors. To meet the demands of this moment, our elected officials must invest in community-based advocacy services for all victims of crime. Advocates are the core of our work. Advocates are on the front lines, directly serving victims and survivors in their most vulnerable time. Crime victim services programs are facing an exodus of advocates due to the inability to provide competitive wages and benefits to those who take on emotionally demanding jobs that require long hours and at times odd. The Minnesota legislature needs to pass this bill. And then, that's not all, they need to continue to support and increase money and resources for crime victim services across the state. And again, I'm going to say this again, I cannot stress this enough, specifically focusing on communities of color who experience the most crime, yet receive the fewest services. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting crime victims and advocates across the state.
Who do we support? Survivor. Who do we support? Who do we support? That's right, Minnesota. Next, I would like to invite our other relative coalition, MUSAC. Jolene Engelking.
It feels so nice to be here today. It feels like forever since we have been back in this rotunda all together. Bonjour and welcome everyone to Action Day 2023. My name is Jolene Engelking and I'm with the Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition. Our executive director, Nicole Matthews, was unable to make it today, but asked me to both speak and send her love out to everyone in this room. I am a white Earth Anishinaabe from here in Minnesota, born and raised in northern Minnesota. I am Eagle Clan. I am a mother, a daughter, a sister, a runner, a theater lover, all those different things that make us each who we are, those different parts of identity that we all have to be attuned to. And so when we're thinking about even the legislation and the demands that we are making today, we're having to think about beyond just sexual violence. How are those intersections? How are we talking about housing, increased access to all the forms of justice that we're able to do? And so, yeah, I was thinking on my way here, you know, my first Action Day was in 2008, which was somehow 15 years ago. And who was around back in those days? Yep. Okay. Yeah. And so just remembering the hundreds and hundreds of people who would pack these rooms. And I'm hoping that now that we have the power of the 6 coalitions really coming together, that we'll be able to bring that back, that we'll be able to show up in force and mass in order to really support the great needs that are happening here in Minnesota. But yeah, I remember 18 or 15 years ago, you know, I was just a baby advocate coming from this tiny little sexual assault program up in northern Minnesota. And on my way down, I just remember thinking, this isn't my space. What am I even doing? What am I getting myself into? There was apprehension and there were nerves. And then I came to this rotunda. I came to hear from amazing speakers, just including some of them today. Hi, Guadalupe, I'm pretty sure you're there. But just in order to, and then we talked to our legislators who listened to us, and we were able to speak truth about what was happening in our communities and what survivors needed and what we needed as programs to be able to get our job done. And, you know, I met with amazing advocates from all across the state as well. And in that moment, I realized, you know what, like, it's okay to be nervous, but at the same point, this is my space. This is our space. This is our capital, and our voices all matter. And so at that time, you know, I remember watching the folks from USAC and from MNCASA and, you know, wanting to be a part of them. Like the idea of coalition work excited me from that very beginning. How I see coalitions as such a powerful force of connection and of support, and to be able to help everyone who is doing this work on the ground. And so to see all 6 of us up here today, including our beautiful shawl here, I find that there's just the collective power is absolutely beautiful to me. And there is energy and excitement that comes within this space. And so now, you know, I have the honor of working with MUSAC. MUSAC is one of, if not the only tribal coalition that only focuses on sexual assault. So those unique needs of sexual violence in Indian country and Alaska. We are a grassroots coalition made up of the 11 federally recognized tribes here in Minnesota, as well as individuals, communities, organizations who all support Indigenous survivors and know that we need to do better for all survivors. But right now, I'm talking particularly about our Indigenous survivors, who this is our land and we need to do better, and we should have equal access to quality services that are designed by us and for us. And yeah, and so even with that, you know, MUSAC has been around for over 20 years, but for the last 10 years, growing from the love and dedication of MUSAC staff, our national work has grown exponentially. And so now, in addition to the amazing work in Minnesota, we're talking with tribes and urban Indian communities and rural spaces and institutions, and within the policy realm to help increase access to healing and justice options to meet the needs of our Indigenous relatives. We have more work to do. We are doing the work today, right? We are here, we're in this space together. And we're needing to do that work both within our sovereign nations, as well as, you know, across Turtle Island, but as we're talking about today, within the land that is now known as Minnesota. There is still to this day, you know, that disproportionate rate of violence against Indigenous people, including sexual violence, sex trafficking, and way too many of our relatives who are still missing or who have been murdered. And we are needing to draw attention to that and to have funding that allows us to do the important work that we need to do and not just check off a list. We are not a menu of services. We are advocates, we are supporters, we are warriors, we are doulas within this space. And I think that we need to recognize and uphold and uplift the power that we have together. And so, and yeah, and so as I echo everyone else, as they're talking about, you know, 8 years is too long. There has been life and death and so many things has happened in those 8 years, and our funding needs to increase. Our rent has increased so much, right? Everything like that. Like, so we need to have funding that equals, you know, the amazing work that we do. And we're not, I fully believe that advocate is not meant to be a stepping stone career. It is not something that is an entry point to something else. It is a calling and something that people need to do. And so, yeah, I echo the call that all the other coalitions have so far said about that increased funding, and MUSAC stands behind that as well. And so today, you know, each of you simply by showing up has been a part of that movement and change for us as Native people and for all who have had violence done to them and for the communities who are working to shift and create change to prevent that continued violence. Your voice matters. We thank the other coalitions here today for the amazing work they have been doing both on the ground and here with legislators, as well as the amazing legislators that we have. And I do want to, and I have to shout out the fact that, you know, 15 years ago, I could not imagine myself being in a space like this, in part because I did not have many people who I could look up to who looked like me and who spoke to me on that human and spiritual level. And so now we are having an increased amount of Indigenous policymakers who are at that level, including our Lieutenant Governor Flanagan, including here within our Minnesota state capital, we have Senator Kunesh and Representative Keeler, and so many more growing people and amazing Indigenous women who are standing up and using their voice to create and enact change. And so speak with them, speak with your legislators, and speak within your communities. We all have a role, and I just want to thank you all for being here.
Miigwech.
Okay, so next we will have another sibling coalition come up and speak to us. Marcia, would you please come to the podium?
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Marcia Milliken, and I'm with the Minnesota Children's Alliance. Our job as a statewide coalition is to work with professionals across the state to provide support, justice, and healing for children who've been abused. We know that child abuse thrives in secrecy and isolation. Over 5,000 kids are sexually abused every year in our state. And those are just the cases that are reported. We know that most kids don't tell anyone about their abuse until they're adults. And we also know there are many adults who never speak of it at all during their life. That's why we're here at the Capitol today. Together with our sister coalitions, we are shining a light on the violence that happens in our communities and what we can do to change it. I'm so grateful to be here representing our 13 children's advocacy centers across the state of Minnesota. Every day, staff at children's advocacy centers and their multidisciplinary teams provide support and healing services. Each year, they provide advocacy, forensic interviewing, medical services, and mental health services to help kids heal. You play a crucial role in helping legislators understand why these services make a difference, why it matters that a child can go to a safe place to talk about what happened to them, why it matters that families can access mental health support in the aftermath of abuse, why it matters that an advocate can walk with victim survivors through the core process to make it just a little bit less overwhelming. State funding enables these services. Funding hasn't kept up with the increased needs of kids and caregivers. We need this increased funding in order for victims and survivors to tap into the services that help them heal. And I'd like to recognize another of our sister coalitions, Mending the Sacred Who. They couldn't be with us today, but they stand in solidarity with us to see a $50 million increase in base funding. Thank you, everyone, for being here today.
And do we have Senator Gustafson? Okay, she's a little delayed. All right, so I have the honor and the pleasure of introducing or inviting May Tong up to the podium to speak. I've been doing this work for 20 years, and I think that May Tong and us grew up together in the movement, and she is always one of those faces that will show up, do the work, be honest, and state-centered and focus on the go. So it's a pleasure to welcome May Tong to the podium.
I don't know if y'all can see me. I think I need a footstool.
Oh, God, thank you. We have one.
Oh, great. Thank you. Oh, I wish I was this tall every day. So good afternoon, everybody. Nyojong. First of all, I would like to thank all 6 coalitions, Mending the Sacred Hoop, Minnesota Alliance on Crime, Minnesota Children's Alliance, Minnesota Coalition Against Sexual Assault, Minnesota Indian Women's Sexual Assault Coalition, and Violence Free Minnesota for organizing Action Day for all of the member programs to come together to share more about our needs with our elected officials. I also want to give thanks to our legislators for making time to hear the concerns of your constituents, who are us, over the next few weeks as we meet with you. My name is Maitong Chang, and I'm the Advocacy Program Director at Transforming Generations. We are a culturally specific agency that provides gender-based violence services to the Hmong and Southeast Asian community. Today, I would like to share a story about our organization with all of you. As you may have heard, there was a recent murder-suicide in our community. Today, I'm so sorry, I was on PTO when this happened. I've been experiencing some burnout because I've been providing direct services to domestic violence and sexual violence victims and survivors for the last 20 years. And I was feeling exhausted. When I heard that there was another murder-suicide in our community, I got literally sick. I couldn't go to work the next day. Their loved one to rest, to deal with the trauma of losing a loved one in such an evil and selfish manner, to seek justice, although no justice will bring their loved one back, to talk about how killing an intimate partner is the ultimate and final act of power and control, and that it's not love or mental illness, and much more than that I just don't have enough time to talk about today. As a small culturally specific nonprofit with only 4 full-time staff providing direct services, we had to pull in 3 other team members to assist with this case. With all the limited resources that we have at our agency, I think that we did a great job and that we're a pretty mighty team. We are asking the state to also show their might by not leaving the most vulnerable members of our communities, survivors of crime, without access to the services and resources they need by supporting House File 1437 and Senate File 1475 to increase space level funding for crime victim services. While our whole team was focused on this crisis, we had other victims and survivors that we had to put on hold. And who's to say that their needs were not just as important? The legislature needs to provide robust, long-term, stable state funding for crime victim services because this funding will fill direct program and survivor needs by providing direct client assistance to survivors, competitive wages for direct service staff who serve on the front lines, risking their health and safety every day. Hotel stays for victims and survivors because shelters are not enough. Responsive programming, violence prevention, and more. In fiscal year 2021, OJP funded crime victim service programs provided support and services to 14,907 abused children, 55,475 domestic violence victims, 56,231 victims of general crimes, and 8,255 sexual assault victims. Don't tell me after this that you did not hear this message, because I've heard it over and over again. Every single person that spoke before me said this. The state of Minnesota has not received an increase in base level funding in over 8 years. We are asking the state to meet the demands at this moment. It is important that all of our elected officials must invest in community-based advocacy services for all victims, especially culturally based services like my organization, which has 8 staff that provide services to the whole state of Minnesota. That's unfair to your constituents. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Kia Whittier. Oh, I can move the mic. Okay, perfect. My name is Kia Whittier, and I'm the Membership and Outreach Program Manager at Violence Free Minnesota. I'm going to speak a little bit later, but I wanted to get a little chant going here, right? You know, this is our house. This is our space, right? We deserve to take up space. So for folks who feel comfortable on the outside, come on in, fill up space. This is your house. Your house. This is your day. Come on in if you feel comfortable. No, not going to pressure you, right? Okay. Yeah, I like the way that looks. And everyone up there, you all look beautiful. Okay, so we're going to do just a quick little chant before we move on, but I want to get the energy up a little bit, right? Let's get excited about this. So, all right. So I am going to say, what do we want? And I'll say funding, and then you'll say, when do we want it now, right? Okay. That's how chants work. We've all done it. Okay. I'm working on it. All right. What do we want? Funding. When do we want it? Now. What do we want? And when do we want it? Okay. I don't know if our legislators can hear you, and I want you all to say that again. What do we want? And when do we want it? Now. All right. There we go. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, next we're going to have Stephanie come up, and all right, thank you.
Hello, thank you all for being here. My name is Stephanie Saji, and I'm the Housing and Economic Justice Program Policy Manager at Violence Free Minnesota. I came to this job because of my lived experience. I'm here today sharing my voice with you all because I was supported in my journey of moving from a victim to a survivor because of frontline working advocates who helped my children and I connect with resources, process trauma, and held space for me to heal and step into my purpose. As we look around this room, many of us are drawn to this work because it is our ikigai. Not our ikigai, but our ikigai, which is the Japanese word for purpose. It is the intersection of 4 things. What the world needs, which is very clear that the world needs advocates. What you love, your passion. And you all come to this work because of your passion. What you are good at, and you are all very good at your work. You are the life's blood that move people from victims to survivors. And many of you inform your work based on your lived experience and what we can be paid for, which is crickets, afterwards. So we cannot train the passion and the lived experience. People who are drawn to this work need to be paid a living wage so they are not stuck in their own financially abusive relationships with their jobs. This work is soul work. It requires the practice of restoring yourself to prevent being burned out. And you cannot restore yourself when you're in survival mode. You just can't. And hearing everyone's stories and being there as their pillar of strength and helping them move through that trauma, it takes from you. And you must restore yourself. And that's not selfish. That's literally restoring yourself so you can give the next day or the next phone call. Thank you all. Thank you. It's emotional to be here. Thank you all. It was a very long time that I couldn't find my voice, and it is because of all of you that I was able to. So this is really wonderful to be here speaking with you. And for those of you who are in person with us, thank you. And for those of you who are not, we know that you're working because we are all underfunded and under capacity. So thank you for showing up to your job today. And we are locked in arms standing here on behalf of you and with you. And again, I'm here today. Thank you. Exercising my voice because of you all. So thank you. Thank you for the work that you do. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing that, your story, your advocacy. We see you and appreciate you as well. Right now, I have the honor and pleasure to introduce you to one of the legislative champions that we talked about earlier. We have Senator Heather Gustafson here with us today.
Thank you, everybody. And just thank you for being here in this beautiful building that holds such important work. It's your house. This is your capital. I'm so happy that you're here today. I just want to tell you a little bit about the work we're doing. I heard earlier on, as you all gathered here, some of the things that you were looking for. And I hope that I can answer and provide some updates on some of those asks, because I think they're important. And you deserve to have sort of an update on where we stand with some of these important policies that need to go forward. I first want to just say that fighting for victims and survivors is one of the reasons that motivated me to run for office. As a survivor, as a survivor myself, I am humbled every day that I now have a platform and a legislative vote to push forward necessary and life-saving policies. I want to update you on where we're at. Early on, I met with as many coalitions and groups and advocacy folks and just as many people as I could. And I just put out the word, if you've ever been trying to move something through, but a Republican Senate stopped you, please come to me now. You have an ally over here. I'll do whatever I can possibly do to get this passed. And it didn't take long. Wonderful people like you've heard from today, the signs I see here. I have met, I think, with all of you. And if I haven't, please let me know. I would love to make time to sit down and chat with you. But it became clear that this was going to be the start of a really wonderful team. And I invite all of you to join us on that as well. My door is always open to you, whether you want to share your story, if you have a concern, if something's not being addressed, let me know, and I'll do whatever I can to help you out. Where we're at right now with legislation, Senate File 1038 makes the payment of costs of evidentiary examinations of victims of provisions in cases involving domestic assault by strangulation included in the cost of a rape kit. And covered as well. Time limit provision for forensic lab testing of sexual assault examination kits. That's Senate File 2019, if you want to track that. Crime victim services, funding increase, organizations that provide direct services to crime victims grant establishment appropriate money, and which I believe was one of the asks I heard just as I had to leave. That went very well through committee. That's Senate File 1475. Senate File 447, qualified domestic violence related offenses, including additional crimes modification. It amends the definition of qualified domestic violence related offenses to include additional crimes so that we can properly define what domestic violence looks like. And then the crime of surreptitious intrusion, which is a really fancy way of somebody videotaping you or taking a picture of you without your clothes, without your consent. Before this year, before this law started moving through into policy, which we believe will happen very soon, it meant that somebody could record you. Somebody could take a picture of you without your consent, without your clothes on, as long as it wasn't through a door or a window, which is unrealistic, which is not addressing many of people who have been a victim to this crime. And so we're going to change that. It also establishes the statute of limitations for that crime, a modification, so that when victims find out, which is not always at the time that the crime is committed, they still then have an avenue to find justice. And just today, maybe an hour ago, I was in judiciary where it passed and is going to the floor the coerced debt bill, which means if you've ever been involved in a partnership where somebody has taken out a loan in your name and you did not have any knowledge of it, nor did you benefit from that money, but it made it so that your credit was ruined, which also becomes one more obstacle to why you can't leave. And if you do leave, you have terrible credit that makes it hard for you to get an apartment, to take care of your kids, to take care of yourself, to be able to move on, which further chains you to an unsafe relationship that you did not want to be in. This makes that something that can go away and provides one little bit of assistance in your escape from something that's unsafe and dangerous. Our past, our experiences, they do not have to live in the shadows. I know it's hard to talk about. It's not easy for me either, but there is power in sharing our stories. That power comes from knowing we're not alone, that other people have been through those moments that seem really hopeless and frozen, but they found a way out, they found a way forward, and you can too. And I want to just repeat one more time, if there is anything that you need, whether it be to share your story, whether it be an ally in the legislature, my door is open, my email is available, my phone number is available. Just let me know. I want to be there with you and work with you on this. So I appreciate you letting me speak today. I want to say thank you to all of these coalitions, Minnesota Alliance on Crime, Violence Free Minnesota, Minnesota Children's Alliance, MCASA, and countless other people who might not be associated with somebody, but have shown up to share their story with me. I see you, I appreciate you, I believe you, and I'm going to be here fighting for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Gustafson. I would like, we have one more speaker, Tara from our Child Advocacy Center, if you wanted to come up and speak.
Hello, can people hear me? Okay, cool, because I can't hear myself. What an impossible act to follow, but I'll give it my best shot. My name is Tyra Hadamio. I work at First Witness Child Advocacy Center over in Duluth, Minnesota. So drove quite a ways to be here today. Working there, I coordinate both our forensic interviewing programs and our cultural equity programs. First Witness has a very bold vision, but one that's easy to get behind. It's a vision of a society that supports children and puts an end to child abuse. Robert Block, former president of the American Academy of Pediatrics, said in 2022 that adverse childhood experiences are the single greatest unaddressed public health threat facing our nation today. First Witness Child Advocacy Center is a child-focused nonprofit agency offering hope, healing, and justice for victims of child abuse and their families. 10 years ago, on average, we served 70 children per year. Last year, we served 220 children, providing child-friendly, legally defensible forensic interviews, intensive ongoing advocacy, mental health services, and medical exams. We also facilitate a multidisciplinary team approach, working with local law enforcement, child protection, and attorneys to accomplish the best outcomes for victims of child abuse. According to the CDC, 1 in 7 girls, 1 in 13 boys, and 1 in 4 non-binary youth in the United States will experience sexual abuse before the age of 18. First Witness is dedicated to the children and families in our community. We offer comprehensive and holistic child advocacy center services to help those in need. We currently serve Carleton County, the Fond du Lac Tribe, Lake County, St. Louis County, and Cook County, and those services are continually expanding. Every child has the fundamental right to be safe, to be treated with dignity, to be cared for, and to thrive in our community. Child abuse robs a child of these fundamental rights. We in this house, we in our communities need to provide safety and justice to all children. And First Witness is honored to take a fundamental role in this response. And I am just honored to be here today. So thank you so much.
I don't know if y'all seen that, but I didn't use the stairs and I just used one leg to get up on the stage. And that's pretty impressive.
So as we wrap up and our time comes to a close, we want to thank everyone that came out today. I would be remiss if I didn't mention Shelley Klein, who is here today. She is someone who has worked tirelessly in the movement and has made a great difference. And she is someone that welcomed me into the movement as a young advocate. So thank you for being here, Shelley, and for all the work that you do for us. So we are a little bit beyond time, but when good work is happening and we gather, we can't necessarily be on the clock in a way that would hit all the points. And so we really thank you for your patience. We are going to do a tag team on this one. We're going to introduce our next speaker. I have the privilege of knowing Kia through her board work with MNCASA. She is an advocate. She is an outspoken leader or up and coming leader in the movement. And we are so happy to kind of pass the baton. Now, we have been here for a while, but we got to make sure that we are mentoring, supporting our next leadership. So when we are all gone, there are people that are continuing to recognize and do the work and be part of the movement. We all want to be out of a job someday. And so we got to ensure that we have a next group of leaders that are going to ensure that we're out of a job. So I'm going to let Guadalupe do the final introduction.
All right, Miigwech. Thanks for all coming out. I'm so excited. Kia actually came to work at Violence Free Minnesota in November. And with her phenomenal job working at Standpoint, and also now she is the membership and outreach program manager for us. She is brilliant, she is smart, she is kind, she is funny, and she has an energy that lights up the rest of the staff as well. So please help me welcome Kia Whittier to the stage.
Okay. Hello again, everyone. Wow, I love the compliments. That's great. Okay, so again, I am Kia Whittier, membership outreach program manager at Violence Free. But I just first want to give a shout out to our amazing speakers. So can we just give another round of applause for them? Everyone has done a fantastic job, especially our member programs and community members. We can't do this without you, right? So I'm just going to close this out here, and a lot of what I'm going to say really you've heard before, might not be new, but I'm just hoping that it can really stick and ingrain into you, right? So we just have to get straight to the facts, right? Crime victim services have not received any, increase in funding in over 8 years. And no one knows that more than everyone here in this space today, right? And for those tuning in as well. And we know how frustrating it is to have to convince folks at the legislature as to why we need this increase in this funding. Providing services to victims of crime is no easy task, and it truly takes a very, very, very special person to do this work. It really does. And you all know that, right? You are the people doing the work. It requires personal sacrifices and taking on risks at the expense of our overall well-being. And let's face it, we're burnt out. Staff are burnt out, right? And yet we're tasked with making a mountain out of a molehill. I would even argue an anthill, honestly, right? And we know the impact that going without resources and support can have on someone's healing and overall livelihood. Many of us do this work because we've experienced some form of violence ourselves, or someone close to us has, right? And we all do this work because victims and survivors of crime deserve to have access to resources and support. We all do this work because we envision a world where violence no longer exists. And we all do this work because we know no one deserves to suffer alone. And we all do this work because we know that there is hope. But But how can we continue to give victims and survivors of crime hope when we ourselves are struggling, exhausted, and tired, right? We're struggling to make ends meet. We're exhausted from having to do so much with so little. And we're tired of these same conversations. We're tired of working multiple jobs and tired of just being tired, honestly, right? But while we're struggling, we're exhausted, and we're tired, we're also resilient, fearless, and incredibly bold. We're resilient because we are tasked with making a mountain out of a molehill, and we do it again and again. We're resilient because our work doesn't stop, and we show up every day to ensure our community members have a safe, non-judgmental place to go for support. We're fearless because one thing you can't do is make a crimes victim advocate scared. You can't do it, right? We're badass. I'm just gonna say it, right? Yeah, yes. And we're bold because we know things can be better, have hope that things will get better, and won't back down until they are better. And we're united, right? We are united. The amount of collective power in this space is palpable, and I wish folks tuning in were able to get that energy, and I hope those tuning in are just as excited as we are. The energy is just really, really strong. So let's go tell legislators why they need to increase the base level funding for crime victim services to $25 million annually, right? And yes, and why they need to invest in our communities. We all want to live in a world free from harm and where we can thrive. And I'd say $25 million a year is a start. We can always take more, and we'll ask for more. But the victims and survivors we all serve deserve this. We deserve this, and our state deserves this. So thank you so much for being here. Yeah, let's give it up again for everyone, all of you all. Yeah. So first, before I actually end things, folks tuning in, I hope that you all can still find ways to reach out to your legislators. Please contact one of the coalitions if you need help getting in touch with them. We are here to support you, even if you can't be here in person. And folks here today, we have some packets at these tables that you can give to your legislators when you're meeting with them. So please take some. And if you need assistance in finding who your legislator is, please reach out to we'll wave our hands. There's people around. One of the staffs at the coalitions. But again, thank you so much. And we're excited to just get this work done. Thank you.
I'll take a second. All right. Thank you, Kia. We appreciate you. And then the final thank yous to all of the staff that made this possible. We wouldn't be here without you. So thank you, coalition staff, our public policy teams, Katie, Sarah, Shanika, can you guys wave? Thank you for your hard work and showing up and making sure that these bills are getting heard and we're testifying and the timing's right. It is an intricate dance and you guys dance well.
I also want to say thank you to our interpreters. Accessibility is true relationship and good allyship and actually being a good relative. So I want to say thank you so much. And I want to also say a shout out to the staff and everybody who had behind the scenes work into making this event happen. The ones that, like I said, couldn't be here, but the ones that are joining us from the live stream, miigwech, and we love you, Minnesota.